So, good afternoon, everybody. If you all know me or spoke to me for even 5 minutes, you probably know I tend to apply certain mental models to how I think about things strategically. And I'm going to do one of them right now. And in my mind, I would say organizations share a lot of fundamental, voice of God's kicked in, fundamental characteristics of organisms in many ways. For example, they can have a almost describable anatomical structure composed of people, workflows, and systems, and they also respond to stimulus. And the biggest, I'd say, prime mover technology stimulus we have in our world today is ultimately artificial intelligence. So I think that's the fundamental hypotheses that we're going to explore today in this panel. So I, Jordan McDonald, CEO of Intrinsic AI, and my intrepid panel are going to walk us through the choppy waters that come from that question. But before we get on, I would like to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves as a bit of an introduction relay, starting with Seto from my right.
I don't know. There we go. There's the voice of God. So yes, my name is Seto. I'm the AI Governance and Ethics Manager at Kainos. How much of an intro do we get each?
That's perfect.
There we go.
Hi, I'm Murray Cowan. I've got two accents. I'm Scottish, but I've lived here for a long time. I'm the team function founder, thinking about the future of teams in the AI era.
Hi, I'm Jamie Allsop. I'm CEO of Clearpool IO, and we build financial market infrastructure. And I'm also involved in some standards bodies for financial services and C++, which most AI systems are built in.
And hello, everyone. My name is Neil Hutcheson. I'm CEO of Software and I. We exist to represent the software industry, but particularly try to accelerate and double its size here in Northern Ireland over the next 10 years.
Perfect. Thank you all. I gave the panel in advance instructions to keep the introduction short, keep it concise, and I think they achieved their objective. So well done, everyone. A fantastic start. So I'm sure we're all aware of the terms AI native, AI first, and all of that vernacular of terminology. It's really beginning to emerge, I would say, in today's world. It's something I'd say surging quite a bit in prevalence. So I would like to initiate by forming almost a collective definition of what these terms mean to us and the characteristics that many of the organizations who exhibit these qualities actually display. And I think I'll reverse and go anti-clockwise this time and ask you, Neil, what's your views on overall summing up your conception of these ideals?
I'll sum it up by saying I don't know, but I'll give you a thought. So my purest view of an AI native organization would actually be that one that achieves revenue without people, but I'll play the game. And I would say it's one that is deployed AI-based software to minimize friction and resistance, maximize efficiency, but without compromising its goals. If that makes sense, and I'll unpack that a little bit more in further questions.
Jamie, far away.
Yeah, okay. For me, it's going to be a bit more, I guess, straightforward. I'm going to say that for me, an AI native organization is one where there's explicit steps have been taken to adopt a technology governance and control strategy that works within the context of AI, but most importantly, that the organizational structure has been updated to support that.
I maybe come at it from a sort of organization and people angle, and I would say an AI native organization has found a way of keeping up with the speed of change. So the ways of working and the use of tools and the deployment of capital and people. So they've got close to that.
So Jamie stole my answer, but I do agree, and just to kind of expand on that a little bit more, it's not just, obviously the governance is really important and making sure you have the right processes in place, you're focusing on responsible AI, but also it's not just an organization that is bolting on AI systems to anything they can think of. Is actually embedded and a part of the culture. It's a part of the business strategy. And also it's being used to support and improve day-to-day activities, and then also, of course, the end users and customers as well.
Excellent, all. So I think we've started to carve a sense of shape into the what in many ways, but I want to harness the lens of our attention probably more into the why. So Neil, from your broad perspective, with that software industry view, it's quite global, I would say, in the context of Northern Ireland. What do you think is the single most compelling reason that organizational leaders should really prioritize this shift to becoming this very much this idealized AI first organization?
Okay, well, I would say that I'm not sure it's essential for every organization. I think that's key to put in. But for a vast majority or a strong proportion, I would say that the biggest risk is survival of your organization. And that's because you'll have AI, let's say, native organizations that may overtake you. You may have companies that transition and are then also able to overtake you or compete you. But also things like your staff who, I listened to another session earlier, which I thought was fantastic. And they made the point that staff within your organization, assuming you're larger than one, are hungry to innovate. So if you're not keeping up, you risk not just the external influences and things outside your control, but your staff as well are going to potentially leave, want to start their own venture because they're ahead of you. So I think that, to me, is the number one reason why you would want to at least be learning, investing in that learning, and then taking steps.
Great, Neil. And Jamie, I think a concept that comes in my mind very much is from the point of view of all day technologists. I think it's always important to temper the aspiration that comes with AI with some of the practical realities that come with the application of AI, because I think there's certainly a distinction between those two things. So from your standpoint, what's the most misunderstood technical reality of building enduring, robust AI systems?
Okay, so I think, I guess, wearing my technology hat and thinking of us from an engineer's point of view, I think we need to go almost back to first principles and understand that AI typically will, I guess, play a part in your systems in two really distinct ways. So it's the augmentation and orchestration, I guess, is one. And the other one is probably the sort of AI kernels, which are kind of solving hard engineering problems within systems that just can't be solved by, formulaic, functional, feature-driven code. But what we find is that when we look at how we use these systems use these techniques within systems, we often overlook the fact that the problems that we're trying to solve, that these systems exist for, can be classified in different ways. And in organizational theory, we talk about things like TM problems, we talk about messes, and we talk about wicked problems. And what you find is that typically AI systems, certainly as they are today, really only are suitable to address up to the level of kind of messes, right? And a mess is, these are all real terms, by the way. And a mess is typically defined as something that you can sort of reorganize, you can refactor, and so on and so forth, and you can iteratively get to a better place. If you ignore the fact that there are wicked problems out there, and wicked messes are the biggest of those, and you try to apply solutions that can only address the mess level, what happens is you move the problem space, and then the challenge here is that you build up the equivalent of technical debt. So I think what we'll start to see in the next coming years is we'll see AI systems and organizations that rely on AI building up something like the sort of thing we had in the early days of Agile, where people coined the phrase Agile architecture is fragile architecture. So I think there's a lot of, technical debt that we're probably, a year and a half away from seeing the impacts of. So that's, yeah.
Great, thanks, Jamie. So I think that's probably one vertical potentially on some of these practical ramifications, which I feel is probably one part technology, but there's probably other considerations, and this almost like cocktail of consideration needs to come from the application of AI, trying to weave it into the fabric of a business. Seto, what do you think is the most critical, I would say, governance blind spot when you're working with business leaders and guiding them on that journey towards adopting AI?
So the thing about governance is it's often looked at as two things, either a compliance checkbox or a blocker, basically. And people don't often want to take that journey because they just want to go through it, get it done, they're working towards a deadline and whatnot. But actually it can really be a strategic enabler. And looking at it that way, for example, organizations are making a number of promises to their customers, to consumers. Governance can be really used to support that. So, you take responsible AI as an example. If you have principles around responsible AI as an organization, you're making a commitment to say, whatever we do will be fair, it will be safe, whatever, secure, whatever your principles are, which are unique to different organizations. Governance ensures that that's baked into whatever it is that you're doing. So throughout the AI lifecycle, right from design all the way through to deployment, you're making sure that everything you do is aligned to those principles as well. And another thing that I think is a bit of a blind spot is oftentimes when they do reluctantly complete whatever risk assessment that they're supposed to be doing, they find that the focus tends to be on technical risks, but actually nobody's really thinking about the operational risks or the organizational risks. So what happens if this goes wrong? So we've gone through everything, we've done the risk assessment, we've identified all of these problems, and we've mitigated it through development, we've deployed it. In a year's time, it goes down. Who's actually responsible for managing that, looking out for any potential issues that could arise in that period of time? And then when it does happen, what processes do we have in place to fix that? So business continuity often goes unthought about in this space.
Great. So I think we're looking at this across a few different almost pillars overlaying that core hypotheses. And I want to shift the prism of focus towards this concept of teams and teams effectiveness and what that means in an ever-shifting world. That shifts regarding collaboration. So Murray, the question I want to pose to you is, what's fundamental assumption about how teams work in this increasingly AI-driven world is being essentially broken with this technology, essentially being an enabler for change, shifting expectations, and new dynamics around how teams operate?
So I, maybe just to put a context on it, I agree with some of the earlier sessions there with Stephen and Andrew that we're facing into the reinvention era. And that's, you're either an AI native company now or you're a legacy company. And if you're a legacy company, you need your AI era business model. That reinvention is, I think, is pretty urgent. So with that as the context, I think the one that's really broken is the management model. And again, I think Stephen and Andrew spoke about how like incentives, hierarchy, they're all sort of breaking apart and they're unable to keep up with the speed of change. So I think the one that's profoundly outdated is the management model that we've grown up with, that is breaking apart and is getting in the way of really fast-moving, empowered, decentralized teams from getting to the work to get their new source of advantage. So I think management model for me is the one that's broken and all that entails.
Great. So what I would like to do now is probably shift our focus away from the status quo and try to project forward into what I describe as a bit of a dense blanket of fog that probably surrounds trying to make any prediction of what the future looks like. So Murray, I'm going to hit you with a double whammy. You're going to get two in a row on this case. What would you say is probably the most specific but unconventional practice that I would say fosters genuine team adaptation in an AI-first world?
I think it's on the move, I would say, from what I see, is a designation of an AI ops lead. That is a sort of new role, new skills with teams that have got the authority to get on with it. So I think that's one that's really starting to take hold at different levels, depending on the size of the company and so on. But I think an internal AI ops lead that's got the expertise and the tools and the authority is really going to drive the cadence that team needs. And maybe just one other that goes with it, I think, is actually AI as a sort of performance partner. Increasingly, much as though we might not like it, is AI with tapping into Teams chats, Slack chats, emails, meeting transcripts can really generate pretty powerful insights, perhaps some exposing insights about how the team's working. But that's where the best teams are going with getting those AI-powered insights. So I think it's both at a sort of execution level, that AI ops lead, and then being able to use AI as a team performance partner.
I think we'll keep the finger really on the pulse on this topic of readiness, which I think you were touching on quite a bit there, Murray, or around what that looks like and how it could be AI supported in many ways. Back to Seto on this, what would you say would help organizations, leaders move beyond this, I'd say, probably tunnel vision view on policy and try to build, I would say, a broader culture of cultural and ethical inquiry when it comes to the adoption of AI, make that part of the fabric of how a business thinks before they even touch tools and touch solutions?
So firstly, I'd say it does really need to be embedded into the organization's culture. So, making sure there are forums or ways that individuals can reach out to, committees, whatever you have set up within the organization, and share any concerns that they have. Asking beyond the can we do this technically and thinking about should we be doing this. So making sure that throughout the organizations you're really thinking about that should we piece. On top of that, you want to, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, but you want to make sure that it's actually baked into the process. So you're constantly thinking about the ethical considerations from design all the way through development, and then of course before deployment. So it's always at the forefront of everyone's mind to make sure that they're actually considering the potential ethical risks and how they can mitigate or manage those in some cases. And then finally, you want to make sure that you have a cross-disciplinary function. So you want to make sure you're considering all different perspectives, whether that's at the organizational level or at the project level where you're actually developing AI. So you want to make sure you've thought about the legal implications, obviously the development technology implications, security, privacy, in some cases HR as well. It really depends on what you're doing, but you're making sure that you have taken into consideration all these different perspectives to make sure that what you're ultimately developing or deploying, whatever you're doing, is aligned to consider ethics across all of those functions.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think many of us in the room have probably dipped our toes in the AI, have probably been swept into this vortex of being transfixed with technology in many ways. But there's more to it beyond that. There's more to it beyond the technical. And I think from your perspective, Neil, if you had to forecast ahead 5 years, again, a dense fog, but you're going to be our lighthouse, my friend, on this one. What non-technical skills do you feel will be the most, I'd say, enduring in this sort of future AI-powered workspace?
Okay, well, I think the people thing's really important, and I try through all the companies that I meet and the things that I read and the tinkering that I do myself to synthesize consistently, right? And my current mental model suggests that people are both curiosity-driven and incentive-driven, and I think no matter what you're doing, you gotta, as an organizational leader in an organization, you gotta remember that. So we were talking outside. We talked about everything but this panel, but there was some overlap, and we were sort of riffing around this notion of curiosity and why Jamie started a business when he did, even though it wasn't the right thing to do. It was hardwired into him. And so what he did was able to, he unleashed a sale. And I think employers got to do that with their staff as well. So incentivize your staff to be who they are in respect of AI, test this, that, and the other. When it comes to then, like those non-technical skills, I think communication is going to become the most important. Still now, even for the likes of this panel, my preference would always be to write my own thoughts first. Never ever go to ChatGPT. I think what you want to do is talk with authenticity and combine that with things that are probably beyond your peripheral. And as good as technology will be, think about it from even a sales perspective. I'm sure there's companies in here who sell a service or a product. Okay, it comes to renewal, and to go back to my definition of perhaps AI native, if you're maximizing efficiency and you're maximizing or reducing that friction, but not compromising your organizational goals, your top of the pyramid goal is going to be selling a phenomenal product or service. Okay, you do the renewal electronically. You don't fly in this year. You might get it this year because of a relationship that's built up. In year 2, are you going to get that? In year 3, are you going to be there and still a client? So the human element, the ability to communicate and think for yourself and reason up and then use technology is going to become, I think, even more important day by day, it seems, as this stuff gets better.
Yeah, so I think we'll go from the broad to probably the ultra-focused in many ways. So if we zoom in, I would say, to the ultimate unit of productivity across organizations, it's ultimately people. That's the lowest common denominator. And I want to focus in and channel our attention particularly to the discipline of software engineering, because often that's seen as, I'd say, an underpinning element of these large-scale AI-driven transformations, particularly for larger organizations. So, Jamie, what would you say would be the core trait that would distinguish a software engineer or somebody operating in the industry who is someone who just uses AI tools and transitions to becoming someone who can use the tools to build truly robust, enduring, production-ready systems?
Okay, before I answer this, how many people in here are actually like engineers or ops people? Yeah, quite a few. So the short answer is anybody who can think, right? So turns out that humans are good at that and AI not so much, right? So, but if we unpack that a little bit, right, to be a bit more serious, and a lot of companies, successful companies do this already today, and I think it's just going to become more important as we go forward, is that we have to understand that humans not only think, but we also are very good at learning. Now, we we can't assimilate, petabytes of information like an AI model can represent. But what we can do is we can engage in both double and triple loop learning. And then if you're not familiar with those terms, essentially single loop learning is kind of like the basic, that glass is there, if I knock it over, it breaks, maybe don't knock it over, right? That kind of thing. Double loop learning is about the causality of things, right? And then triple loop learning is really about trying to understand how do we reason if we even need to do a thing, right? It's kind of the thinking outside the box, the source of creativity, and so on and so forth. So I think the things that we focus on as a business when we try to hire, or when you grow smaller or large organizations, it's all the same, is you're trying to find those people who have an ability to learn. If you have an ability to learn, then you can use tools like AI to support and augment your capabilities within an organization. So I guess, and just on that note, is that one of the things that I think has been a theme from a few people here has been this idea of decentralization, I guess. And communication. And if you go back to, I guess, 2008, late noughties, that's when we had the first, successful evidence of having dispersed and truly decentralized teams or organizations and have them work successfully and be quote-unquote agile, I guess. So there's a lot of learnings from things that have happened in the past that are now becoming more prevalent and more important to organizations today.
Perfect, Jamie. And probably to bring us to a close, I'd probably like to end on the actionable and try to close on concrete recommendations. So I'm going to ask a question for everyone in the panel, and everyone in the panel can also see that we have 40 seconds left on the clock, so calibrate your answers accordingly. So the question will be, for every organization, leader, somebody who wants to embrace AI that's in the audience today, what would be your one recommendation? I'll start with Seto.
Align your governance processes and frameworks with your business strategy.
Reinvent the business model.
Hire people who can learn.
Go talk to intrinsic AI.
I promise I didn't pay him to say that. Yeah, I mean, he really means it, you can tell.
I do.
So to close, coming down to 3, 2, 1, would you all end on giving a sincere thanks to our panel and their insights today?